The crystal walls of the High Council chamber glowed with soft blue light. Around the massive circular table, representatives from 47 different worlds sat in worried silence. Their forms were as varied as the stars themselves. Some looked like walking trees, others resembled floating jellyfish, and a few appeared to be made of living metal. But despite their differences, fear showed clearly on every face. Council Speaker Thailand stood at the center of the room. Her crystalline body caught the light and scattered it in rainbow patterns across the walls. She had called this emergency meeting, and now she wished she hadn't. The news she brought was the worst in Confederation history. "The Vorth swarm has taken another system," she announced, her voice ringing like distant bells. "Epsilon Taurus fell yesterday. All 7 billion inhabitants are gone." Gasps and cries filled the chamber. Representative Korvac, a tree-like being from the forest world of Verdania, shook his massive branches. "How many systems is that now?" 17, Thailand replied. "In just 3 months." The Vorth swarm had appeared from the dark space between galaxies without warning. At first, the Confederation thought they were refugees seeking new homes. The galaxy had welcomed many such groups before. But the Vorth weren't looking for homes. They were looking for food. And they ate everything. Plants, animals, people, even the planets themselves. "Our weapons don't work," said General Zephyr, a bird-like creature whose feathers had turned gray with worry. "They adapt too quickly. Every time we find something that hurts them, they change. Within hours, our best weapons become useless. Diplomacy has failed as well," added Ambassador Serenity, whose glowing form pulsed with distress. "They don't respond to any of our communications. They just consume." The chamber fell silent again. For over 1,000 years, the Galactic Confederation had solved every problem through peaceful means. They had ended wars with words, stopped conflicts with kindness, and built a civilization based on understanding and cooperation. But none of that worked against an enemy that only wanted to devour everything in its path. Thailand looked around the table at the most powerful beings in the galaxy, scientists who could split atoms with their minds, philosophers who had unlocked the secrets of the universe, healers who could bring the dead back to life. All of them sat helpless before an enemy they couldn't understand or reason with. "There is one option we haven't considered," Thailand said slowly. She hated even thinking about it. "The quarantine zone. Sol 3. The reaction was immediate. Several representatives stood up in shock. Others made sounds of disgust or fear. Ambassador Serenity's glow flickered like a dying star. "You can't be serious," said Representative Harmony, a floating sphere of pure energy. "Those creatures are monsters. They're banned from civilized space for good." Reason, everyone in the chamber knew the story of first contact with Sol 3. The Confederation had sent a peaceful exploration ship to make contact with the newly spacefaring species. They called themselves humans. The meeting should have been simple, the same welcome ceremony the Confederation had performed hundreds of times before. But humans were different. They came from a death world where everything tried to kill everything else. They had spent their entire history fighting wars, building weapons, and learning new ways to destroy their enemies. When the Confederation ship appeared in their sky, the humans didn't see peaceful explorers. They saw potential invaders. The humans attacked without warning. They used kinetic weapons that fired metal bullets at incredible speeds. They launched chemical explosives that could level city blocks. They even threatened to use something called nuclear weapons that could split atoms and destroy entire continents. The Confederation ship escaped, but barely. 3 crew members died in the attack. The first violent deaths in Confederation space in over 200 years. The shocked council immediately declared Sol 3 a quarantine zone. No one was allowed to visit the Death World or contact its violent inhabitants ever again. "They are savages," continued Representative Harmony. "They solve problems by destroying things. They've spent their entire history killing each other. How could such creatures possibly help us?" "Because," Thailand said quietly, "they know how to fight." The word hung in the air like poison. Fighting was something the Confederation had left behind centuries ago. They had evolved beyond such primitive behavior. They used their minds instead of their fists, their hearts instead of their weapons. "We've tried everything else," Thailand continued. "Our scientists can't create weapons fast enough to keep up with Vorth adaptation. Our diplomats can't communicate with them. Our military forces," she gestured toward General Zephyr, who lowered his head in shame. "We don't really have military forces. We have peacekeepers, security guards, police. None of them know how to fight a war. But the humans do, said a quiet voice from the back of the chamber. Everyone turned to look at Archivist Memoriam, an ancient being who remembered everything that had ever happened in Confederation space. I was there during first contact. I saw what they were capable of. They didn't just have weapons, they had tactics, strategy. They thought like predators. Which is exactly why we can't trust them, Representative Harmony shot back. Once we let them into our space, how do we get them to leave? How do we know they won't turn their weapons on us? Because, Thylan said, they'll be too busy fighting the Vorth. She activated the chamber's central display. Images of the latest Vorth attack filled the air around them. Massive bioships the size of moons descended on populated worlds. Swarms of smaller creatures spread across planetary surfaces, consuming everything in their path. Cities disappeared beneath writhing masses of alien flesh. Oceans boiled away as the Vorth drank them dry. Look at this, Thylan said, pointing to the images. Really look. The Vorth aren't just killing us, they're eating us. Every person they consume makes them stronger. Every world they devour adds to their numbers. If we don't stop them soon, there won't be a confederation left to save. The chamber fell silent as the representatives stared at the horrific images. Some covered their eyes, others wept openly. The reality of their situation was finally sinking in. The humans are violent, Thylan admitted. They're primitive and dangerous and everything we've spent centuries trying not to be. But they're also survivors. They come from a world where only the strongest and smartest live to see another day. If anyone can find a way to hurt the Vorth, it's them. General Zephyr raised his feathered head. What if you're wrong? What if the humans can't help us either? Then we'll die, Thylan said simply. But at least we'll die knowing we tried everything. Even the unthinkable. The vote took 3 hours. Representatives argued, pleaded, and debated until their voices were hoarse. But in the end, fear won over pride. The measure passed by a single vote. As the representatives filed out of the chamber, Thylan remained behind. She stared at the communications console that would send their message to Sol 3. Never in her wildest dreams had she imagined the day when the peaceful Confederation would ask for help from a world full of killers. She composed the message carefully, trying to find words that would convey their desperation without revealing too much weakness. Finally, she settled on something simple and direct, the kind of message that warriors might understand. This is Council Speaker Thylan of the Galactic Confederation, she began. We are under attack by an enemy we cannot defeat. We need your help. She hesitated for a moment, then added the words that would change the galaxy forever. We know you are fighters. Please fight for us. The message launched into space, racing toward a small blue world on the galaxy's edge. Thylan watched it go and wondered what kind of response would come back. Would the humans ignore them? Attack them? Or would they actually help? Soon, she thought, they would find out what happens when you call upon the children of a death world to save the galaxy. The message arrived at Earth's Deep Space Monitoring Station at 0347 hours, Greenwich Mean Time. Technician Sarah Kim was halfway through her third cup of coffee when the computer started screaming alerts. She dropped her mug and stared at the screens in disbelief. This can't be right, she muttered, running the signal through every filter and decoder they had. But the message was clear. It was definitely alien in origin, and it was asking for help. Within an hour, the message had traveled through every level of command. General Martinez woke the president at 4 a.m. The president called an emergency meeting of the UN Security Council. By sunrise, every major world leader was staring at the same impossible message that had landed in Sarah Kim's lap. Admiral Sarah Chen stood before the massive screens in the Pentagon Situation Room. She was a small woman with gray hair and steel-gray eyes that had seen too much combat. Scars crisscrossed her hands from her days as a Marine pilot, before she climbed the ranks to become humanity's top military strategist. Let me make sure I understand this correctly, she said, reading from the translated message. The same aliens who quarantined us for being too violent are now asking us to be violent on their behalf? Secretary of Defense Williams nodded grimly. That's about the size of it. They're facing something called the Vorth Swarm, and their peaceful methods aren't working. President Morrison leaned forward in his chair. What do we know about this Vorth threat? Admiral Chen pulled up a series of images on the main screen. The photos had been included with the alien message. Worlds stripped bare, cities consumed, Entire populations gone without a trace. From what they've told us, the Vorth are a parasitic species that consumes organic matter for energy. They adapt quickly to any weapons used against them. The Confederation has lost 17 star systems in 3 months. And they think we can help? Asked the British Prime Minister joining the video conference from London. They're desperate, Admiral Chen replied. Remember, these are the same beings who called us Deathworld savages after our first meeting. For them to ask us for help means they're out of options. The room fell silent as everyone considered the implications. 30 years had passed since humanity's first contact with the Galactic Confederation. It hadn't gone well. When the alien ship appeared in Earth's orbit, humanity had responded the way they always did when faced with the unknown. They prepared for war. The aliens had expected a peaceful first contact ceremony. Instead, they got missile locks, fighter jet escorts, and very serious people, asking very pointed questions about their intentions. When the aliens tried to land without permission, human forces opened fire. 3 aliens died in the encounter, the first violent deaths in their space in centuries. The shocked Confederation immediately declared Earth a quarantined zone and left, warning all member species to avoid the dangerous humans at all costs. Since then, humanity had been alone in their corner of the galaxy. They'd kept advancing their technology, building better ships and weapons, always preparing for the day when the aliens might return. Most humans assumed it would be as invaders seeking revenge. What's our military readiness status? President Morrison asked. Admiral Chen smiled for the first time that morning. Excellent, sir. The Confederation's rejection taught us that we couldn't rely on anyone but ourselves. We've spent 3 decades building the most advanced military force in human history. She pulled up displays showing Earth's current arsenal. Orbital defense platforms surrounded the planet like a deadly necklace. The moon housed massive shipyards where humanity's new warships were built. Mars served as a training ground for the Solar Defense Force, where humanity's best soldiers learned to fight in the vacuum of space. The UES Retribution is our newest and most powerful warship, Admiral Chen continued, showing images of a sleek black vessel bristling with weapons. She's designed specifically for combat against unknown alien threats. We also have the Vengeance, the Defiance, and 12 smaller assault ships ready for deployment. Our ground forces have been training for extraterrestrial combat scenarios for 30 years, added General Martinez. Every weapon we've developed has been tested against theoretical alien defenses. Our soldiers know how to fight in zero gravity, hostile atmospheres, and unknown terrain. The Chinese representative spoke up. But do we want to help them? They rejected us. Called us monsters. Why should we risk human lives for people who want nothing to do with us? Admiral Chen turned to face the screen. Because, sir, this might be our only chance to prove that we're more than just killers. Yes, we're good at violence, but we use that violence to protect the innocent and defend those who can't defend themselves. There's also the strategic consideration, added Dr. Elizabeth Warren, the Secretary of State. If this Vorth swarm wins, they'll eventually reach our space. Better to fight them now, alongside allies, than face them alone later. President Morrison stood up. Admiral Chen, what would you need for a military response? Give me 72 hours to prep the fleet, she replied without hesitation. I want the Retribution, 3 assault ships, and our best ground troops. That's about 2,000 personnel total. And you think that's enough to make a difference? Admiral Chen's smile turned predatory. Mr. President, these aliens have never seen real warfare. They don't know what humans are capable of when we stop holding back. 2,000 human soldiers with modern weapons could probably conquer half their galaxy. We're not going there to conquer, the President reminded her sternly. No, sir, we're going there to save lives. But the Vorth won't know the difference. The debate continued for 6 more hours. Representatives from every major nation argued the pros and cons of military intervention. Some worried about the risks to human forces. Others questioned whether humanity should involve itself in alien conflicts. In the end, it was the images that decided them. Photos of dead worlds and consumed civilizations. Entire species wiped out by an enemy that couldn't be reasoned with or stopped through diplomacy. The motion passes, President Morrison announced as the final votes came in. Admiral Chen, you have authorization to deploy the Solar Defense Force to assist the Galactic Confederation against the Vorth swarm. Admiral Chen saluted crisply. Understood, sir. We won't let you down. As the meeting broke up, Admiral Chen remained behind to coordinate with her staff. Commander Jake Morrison, no relation to the president, was her first officer aboard the Retribution. He was a tall man with cybernetic implants replacing his left arm and eye, both lost in combat training exercises. "Think they'll be happy to see us?" he asked with a grin. "Probably not," Admiral Chen replied, "but they asked for our help and they're going to get it, whether they like it or not." The next 72 hours passed in a blur of activity. The Retribution was loaded with every weapon humanity had developed. Kinetic cannons that could punch through asteroid belts, plasma torpedoes that burned hotter than stars, nuclear missiles that could crack continents, and that was just the ship-to-ship weapons. The ground forces prepared their own arsenal, powered armor that could survive in the vacuum of space, railguns that fired metal slugs at relativistic speeds, chemical explosives designed to work in any atmosphere, biological weapons that could adapt to alien physiologies. Sergeant Maria Santos checked her gear one final time before boarding the transport. She was a compact woman with dark hair and darker eyes, a veteran of every major human conflict in the past decade. Her squad called her Angel of Death because she had a talent for finding the enemy's weak spots. "You ready for this, Sarge?" asked Private Johnson, one of her younger soldiers. "Kid," she replied, shouldering her rifle. "I've been ready for this my whole life. Time to show the galaxy what Earth's children can do." The fleet launched on schedule, disappearing into hyperspace toward the coordinates the aliens had provided. Behind them, Earth's population watched the news feeds with a mixture of pride and anxiety. For the first time in 30 years, humanity was going back to the stars. But this time they were going as warriors. Admiral Chen stood on the bridge of the Retribution as the stars stretched into lines around them. Soon they would arrive at the alien staging area and meet the Confederation forces. She wondered what the aliens would think when they saw what humanity had become during their isolation. "Time to find out," she murmured, watching the tactical displays. "Time to show them why you never pick a fight with a death world." The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Xerion system, with all the subtlety of a meteor strike. Alarms blared across every Confederation ship as their sensors detected the incoming vessels. To their peaceful instruments, the human ships looked like nothing they had ever seen. Dark, angular, and covered in what could only be weapons. Council Speaker Thylan stood on the bridge of the Confederation flagship, watching the tactical display with growing unease. The human ships moved in perfect formation, maintaining precise distances and defensive positions. Their sensor sweeps were active and aggressive, probing every object in the system for potential threats. "They scan like predators," whispered General Zephyr, his feathers rustling with nervousness. "Look how they spread out, covering all approach vectors." The lead human ship was the largest, nearly twice the size of the Confederation flagship, but somehow still managing to look sleek and dangerous. Its hull was black as space itself, broken only by the running lights that outlined weapon emplacements and sensor arrays. "Incoming transmission," announced the communications officer, a young Altarian whose blue skin had gone pale with fear. "Put it through," Thylan replied, trying to keep her voice steady. The main screen flickered to life, revealing the bridge of the human ship. Thylan's first glimpse of a human in 30 years was shocking. The woman standing at the center of the bridge was small by Confederation standards, but something about her presence filled the screen. Her gray hair was pulled back in a military style, and her steel-colored eyes seemed to look right through the display into Thylan's soul. "This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the United Earthship Retribution," the human said, her voice crisp and professional. "We received your distress call and are here to assist against the Vorth threat." Thylan took a moment to compose herself. "Admiral Chen, I am Council Speaker Thylan. We are grateful for your response. However, we should discuss the terms of engagement before." "With respect, Speaker Thylan," Admiral Chen interrupted, "we can discuss terms after we've dealt with the immediate threat. Where are the Vorth forces currently located?" The directness caught Thylan off guard. In Confederation culture, any meeting began with extensive ceremonies and polite conversation. Important decisions took days or weeks of careful deliberation. But these humans seemed ready to start fighting immediately. "The Vorth are attacking the outer colonies," General Zephyr answered when Thylan hesitated. 3 systems are under assault as we speak." "Show me," Admiral Chen commanded. The tactical display updated to show the current battle zones. Red markers indicated Vorth bioships spreading across 3 different star systems like a plague. Blue markers showed Confederation forces retreating in all 3 locations. Admiral Chen studied the display for perhaps 30 seconds before nodding. We'll take the Kalos system. Your forces can continue their current operations in the other zones. Wait, Thailand said quickly. Shouldn't we coordinate our assault? Plan our strategy together? The Vorth adapt quickly to new threats and we need to— Speaker Thailand, Admiral Chen said gently but firmly. You called us because your methods aren't working. Let us handle this our way. The transmission ended abruptly, leaving the Confederation leadership staring at a blank screen. Before anyone could respond, the human fleet was already moving, accelerating toward the Kalos system at speeds that made Thailand's navigation officer cry out in alarm. They're going to get there in less than 6 hours, the officer reported. That's impossible. No ship can sustain those acceleration forces. Unless, General Zephyr said quietly, they built their ships to handle forces that would kill most organic beings. Thailand felt a chill run through her crystalline form. She had forgotten that humans came from a high-gravity world. Their bodies were dense and sturdy compared to most Confederation species. What would be crushing acceleration to her might feel normal to them. Patch me through to the Kalos Defense Force, she ordered. I want to observe whatever the humans are planning to do. The connection established just as the human fleet entered the Kalos system. The scene that greeted them was horrific. Massive bioships, each one the size of a small moon, were surrounding the inhabited worlds. Smaller Vorth creatures swarmed across planetary surfaces like a living carpet, consuming everything in their path. The Confederation forces that had been trying to defend Kalos were in full retreat. Their sleek, elegant ships fled before the advancing Vorth horde, their non-lethal peacekeeping weapons utterly useless against the alien swarm. Then the humans arrived. The UES Retribution came out of hyperspace already firing. Streams of kinetic projectiles lanced through space at a significant fraction of light speed, punching through Vorth bioships like they were made of paper. The alien creatures shrieked across every frequency as superheated metal tore through their living hulls. What are those weapons? Gasped the Kalos system commander, his voice transmitted across the emergency channel. Thailand watched in fascination and horror as the human fleet spread out into attack formation. Each ship moved independently, but in perfect coordination with the others. They didn't advance in a straight line like Confederation forces would. Instead, they weaved and dodged, making themselves difficult targets while maintaining constant fire. Those are kinetic weapons, she realized. They're throwing metal at relativistic speeds. It was such a primitive concept, hurling chunks of matter at your enemies. But the results were undeniable. Vorth bioships that had shrugged off Confederation energy weapons were being torn apart by simple metal projectiles moving fast enough to punch through anything. The Vorth tried to adapt. Thailand watched through the tactical feeds as the bioships began changing their structure, growing thicker armor and developing deflector fields. But the humans had anticipated this. Switching to secondary armament, Admiral Chen's voice came through the communication channel. All ships deploy plasma torpedoes. The human ship suddenly sprouted new weapons, glowing projectiles that burned like miniature stars. The plasma torpedoes moved more slowly than the kinetic rounds, but when they hit, they melted through Vorth armor like it was ice in a furnace. How many different weapons do they have? Whispered General Zephyr. As if in answer to his question, the human ships revealed yet another surprise. The UES Retribution launched a salvo of what could only be described as controlled nuclear explosions. The fusion warheads detonated just outside the Vorth bioships, bathing them in radiation and heat that no living creature could survive. But it was what happened next that truly shocked the watching Confederation forces. Instead of maintaining a safe distance like any sensible commander would do, Admiral Chen ordered her ships to move closer to the enemy. All units, prepare for boarding operations, came the impossible command. They can't be serious, General Zephyr said faintly. They're going to board the Vorth ships? Those things are full of hostile alien organisms. Thailand watched in amazement as the human ships deployed smaller craft, armored shuttles that flew directly into the damaged bioships. Through the sensor feeds, she could see human soldiers in powered armor cutting their way through the Vorth vessels, with weapons that seemed to burn through anything. The soldiers moved through the bioships like they belonged there. When Vorth creatures attacked them, the humans responded with calm professionalism, using their weapons to cut down anything that got in their way. They planted explosives in critical areas, then withdrew before detonating charges that tore the bioships apart from within. "This is barbaric," Ambassador Serenity whispered, her glow flickering with distress. "They're actually inside those creatures, killing them at close range." "It's effective," Thylon replied, unable to look away from the displays. "Look at the tactical situation." The Kalos system, which had been on the verge of falling to the Vorth, was now completely under human control. In less than 4 hours, Admiral Chen's fleet had destroyed or driven off every Vorth bioship in the system. The planets were safe, their populations saved from consumption. But the price of that victory was visible in the aftermath. Space around Kalos was filled with debris, the remains of Vorth bioships that had been systematically destroyed. Radiation from the nuclear weapons made several areas unsafe for Confederation vessels to approach. "Kalos system is secure," Admiral Chen reported, her image reappearing on the communication screen. "We're beginning cleanup operations now. Any Vorth survivors are being hunted down and eliminated." "Eliminated," Thylon repeated weakly. "We don't take prisoners in this kind of war," Admiral Chen explained matter-of-factly. "The Vorth are a parasitic species that can't be reasoned with or reformed. The only way to stop them is to kill them all." The casual way she discussed mass extermination made Thylon's crystalline form shiver. This was what they had asked for. Warriors who could do what the Confederation could not. But seeing it in action was harder than she had imagined. "We'll proceed to the next system under attack," Admiral Chen continued. "Unless you have strategic intelligence that would help us plan our assault?" Thylon realized that the humans were asking for her input. Despite their overwhelming military superiority, they still wanted to coordinate with Confederation forces. It was a small sign that they saw this as a partnership rather than a conquest. "The Vorth in the Epsilon system have been there longer." She managed. The Epsilon system was dying. "Admiral," Chen studied the tactical display as the human fleet approached their second target. What they found was worse than Kalos had been. The Vorth had been feeding here for weeks, and it showed. 3 of the system's 5 planets were already stripped bare, their surfaces scarred and lifeless. The remaining 2 worlds were covered in writhing masses of Vorth biomatter, growing larger by the hour. "They're not just consuming the planets," reported Commander Morrison from his sensor station. "They're converting them into breeding grounds." The bioships in this system were different too. Larger, more heavily armored, and covered in defensive growths that pulsed with alien energy. These Vorth had learned from their defeat at Kalos. They had adapted. "Sir?" called Lieutenant Park from the communications station. "We're receiving a transmission from the Confederation observer ship." Council Speaker Thylon's crystalline face appeared on screen, her expression worried. "Admiral Chen, our scientists have been analyzing the Vorth in this system. They've changed since your attack at Kalos. Their armor is thicker, their weapons more powerful. We believe they've incorporated defensive measures specifically designed to counter your kinetic weapons." Admiral Chen nodded calmly. "Understood. We'll adjust our tactics accordingly." "But Admiral," Thylon continued, "perhaps we should consider a different approach. Our diplomatic corps has been working on a communication protocol that might—" "Speaker Thylon," Admiral Chen interrupted gently. "With respect, you've tried diplomacy. It didn't work. You called us because you needed fighters. Let us fight." The transmission ended and Admiral Chen turned to her tactical officer. "Analysis, Commander Morrison." Morrison brought up detailed scans of the Vorth forces. "The bioships have grown what looks like reactive armor, probably designed to disperse kinetic impacts. But their new defensive systems appear to be organic. That means they're vulnerable to different types of damage. Recommendations? Plasma weapons should burn right through biological armor. And if we can get close enough, our boarding teams can target their internal systems directly." Admiral Chen smiled. It was the expression of a predator who had just spotted wounded prey. "Excellent. Signal the fleet. We're going in hot." The human fleet accelerated toward the Vorth positions, but this time their approach was different. Instead of opening with kinetic weapons, they began with plasma bombardment. Streams of superheated gas lanced across space, striking the bioship's new armor and burning through it like acid. The Vorth responded immediately. Their bioships launched clouds of smaller creatures, living missiles that swarmed toward the human fleet with surprising speed. Each one was about the size of a fighter craft, but instead of metal and electronics, they were made of muscle and bone and alien. "Hunger, deploying point defense," reported the weapons officer. The human ships bristled with automated guns that tracked and destroyed the incoming Vorth creatures. Streams of bullets and energy beams created a deadly net around each vessel, shredding anything that came too close, but there were so many of them. Hull breach on Deck 7, came a report from damage control. One of those things got through. Seal the compartment, Admiral Chen ordered. Security teams to Deck 7. Full hazmat protocols. Through the internal monitors, she watched as her security team engaged the Vorth creature that had penetrated their hull. The alien thing was about the size of a large dog, but it had too many teeth and moved in ways that hurt to watch. It had already started trying to consume the hull plating, its acidic secretions eating through the metal. The security team surrounded it with weapons drawn. Their bullets tore into the creature, but it kept moving even as pieces of it splattered across the bulkheads. Finally, Sergeant Martinez stepped forward with a plasma torch and burned the thing down to its component atoms. Deck 7 secure, came the report. That was unpleasant. Just remember, Admiral Chen announced over the ship's intercom, this is what they do to entire planets. Every day we delay, billions more civilians die. The battle continued to rage around them. The human fleet had adapted to the Vorth's new tactics, but the aliens were adapting right back. Each exchange taught both sides something new about their enemies. But humans had one advantage the Vorth didn't expect: creativity. Commander Morrison, Admiral Chen said, studying the tactical display. What's the largest bioship in this system? That one, Morrison replied, highlighting a massive vessel that looked like a cross between a whale and a cancer. It appears to be their command ship. All the smaller bioships seem to be taking orders from it. Can we board it? Morrison ran the calculations. It's heavily defended and the hull is over 50 meters thick, but yes, if we can get a team close enough. Admiral Chen nodded. Prepare a boarding party. I want our best people for this one. 20 minutes later, Sergeant Maria Santos stood in the Retribution's launch bay, checking her equipment one final time. Her squad was composed of humanity's most elite soldiers, men and women who had trained their entire careers for exactly this kind of mission. Remember? She told them as they climbed into their assault pod. We're going into a living ship. Everything in there will try to kill us. The walls, the floor, probably the air itself. Watch each other's backs and trust your training. The assault pod launched from the Retribution like a bullet, racing toward the massive Vorth command ship while the fleet provided covering fire. Behind them, Admiral Chen watched through the tactical displays as her best soldiers disappeared into the alien vessel. Inside the bioship, Santos and her team found themselves in a nightmare landscape. The corridors were alive, pulsing with alien circulation systems. The walls secreted acids that tried to dissolve their armor. Creatures that looked like nothing from Earth's biology attacked them from hidden alcoves, but the humans pressed forward with grim determination. They had trained for this. They knew how to fight in hostile environments where everything was trying to kill them. After all, they came from one. Movement ahead, reported Corporal Kim, raising her rifle as something large shifted in the shadows. The creature that emerged was unlike anything they had faced before. It stood 3 meters tall on too many legs, with appendages that ended in razor-sharp claws. Its hide was covered in natural armor that looked thick enough to stop bullets. Santos studied it for half a second, then made her decision. Plasma charges. Concentrated fire. Her squad responded with practiced efficiency. 6 plasma weapons fired simultaneously, their superheated projectiles converging on the creature's center mass. The alien thing shrieked and charged, but it was already dying. The plasma had burned through its armor and was cooking it from the inside. Keep moving, Santos ordered as the creature collapsed. We need to find their command center. They fought their way deeper into the bioship, leaving a trail of dead alien creatures behind them. The ship itself seemed to react to their presence, trying to seal passages and trap them in dead ends. But Santos had studied the sensor readings. She knew where they needed to go. The command center, when they finally reached it, was a vast chamber filled with pulsing organic computers and creatures that might have been the Vorth equivalent of officers. At the center of it all was something that could only be the ship's brain, a massive organ connected to thousands of neural pathways. There, Santos said, pointing to the brain. That's our target. The Vorth defenders swarmed toward them, but they were too late. Santos armed the plasma charges her team had carried into the ship and threw them at the command center. The humans retreated as fast as they could while the charges counted down. The explosion ripped through the bioship's command center like a miniature star, neural pathways severed, Organic computers died, and the massive brain that had controlled thousands of smaller vessels simply ceased to exist. Outside, Admiral Chen watched as the Vorth fleet suddenly lost coordination. Bioships that had been moving in perfect formation began to drift aimlessly. Smaller creatures stopped responding to commands. The entire swarm fell into chaos. "All ships," she ordered, "target the leaderless vessels. Don't give them time to reorganize." The human fleet fell upon the confused Vorth forces like wolves on scattered sheep. Without central command, the bioships couldn't adapt or coordinate their defenses. One by one, they were hunted down and destroyed. By the time Santos and her team were extracted from the dying command ship, the battle was effectively over. The Epsilon system was free, its remaining planets saved from consumption. But Admiral Chen knew this was just the beginning. Intelligence reports indicated that the main Vorth fleet was massing for a final assault on Confederation space. The swarm that had attacked individual systems was just the advance guard. The real war was about to begin. "Signal the Confederation forces," she ordered. "Tell them we need to coordinate for a major engagement. The Vorth are coming with everything they have." As her message transmitted to Speaker Thylon, Admiral Chen looked out at the stars and wondered if humanity was strong enough to save a gay. The final battle began at the edge of Confederation space, in a system that had once been home to 12 billion souls. Now it was nothing but empty planets and the largest Vorth fleet anyone had ever seen. Admiral Chen stood on the bridge of the Retribution, watching as her sensors counted the enemy forces. Thousands of bioships filled the darkness between worlds, ranging from fighters the size of shuttles to massive hive ships that dwarfed anything in human or Confederation fleets. "Final count, sir," reported Commander Morrison. "Estimated 8,000 hostile vessels of various sizes. The largest ones are..." He paused, checking his readings again. "The largest ones are moon-sized." Council Speaker Thylon's voice came through the communication system, transmitted from the Confederation flagship that hung back at a safe distance. "Admiral Chen, our analysis suggests this is the entire Vorth swarm. Everything they've built, everything they've consumed, it's all here." "Good," Admiral Chen replied calmly. "That means we only have to win one battle to end this war." The human fleet was pitifully small by comparison. 4 heavy cruisers, 12 destroyers, and 36 fighters against an enemy that numbered in the thousands. Any sane military commander would have retreated to fight another day. But Admiral Chen wasn't just any commander. She came from a world where being outnumbered was just another tactical challenge to overcome. "All ships, this is Admiral Chen," she announced on the fleet-wide channel. "Today we're not just fighting for the Confederation or for our own survival. We're fighting to prove that there are some things in this universe that can't be conquered, can't be consumed, and can't be stopped. We're fighting to show the galaxy what humans can do when we stop holding back." Across the fleet, 2,000 human soldiers checked their weapons and prepared for battle. They came from every nation on Earth, united by the knowledge that they were the only thing standing between the Vorth swarm and the complete destruction of galactic civilization. Sergeant Santos reviewed her mission parameters one final time. Her job was the most dangerous of all. She and her team would be boarding the largest Vorth hive ship to plant humanity's most powerful weapon deep in its core. "You sure about this, Sarge?" asked Private Chen, checking his armor seals. "That thing's the size of a moon. How are we supposed to find anything important in there?" Santos smiled grimly. "Same way we always do, kid. We follow the trail of bodies until we find something worth killing." The battle began when the Vorth detected the human fleet's approach. Clouds of biofighters swarmed toward them like angry insects, their living hulls pulsing with alien weapons. But the humans had learned from their previous encounters. "Deploying countermeasures," reported the weapons officer. The human ships released clouds of micromissiles, tiny weapons barely larger than bullets but guided by advanced AI systems. Each missile sought out a biofighter and detonated on contact, creating a deadly net of explosions that cleared lanes through the Vorth swarm. But for every enemy fighter they destroyed, 2 more seemed to take its place. The Vorth had been building this fleet for months, converting the populations of entire worlds into war material. "We're being overwhelmed," Commander Morrison reported as the tactical display lit up with incoming threats. "There are just too many of them." Admiral Chen studied the battle situation with the calm focus that had made her humanity's greatest military strategist. The conventional approach wasn't working. Time for something unconventional. Signal the Confederation forces, she ordered. Tell them to prepare for immediate retreat. Sir? Morrison looked confused. We're ordering our allies to run away? We're getting them out of the blast radius, Admiral Chen corrected. Arm the Nova charges. Morrison's face went pale. Nova charges were humanity's ultimate weapon, fusion devices designed to trigger stellar collapse. They had never been tested in combat, and for good reason. The explosion would be visible from 1,000 light-years away. Admiral, Thailand's voice came through the communicator. Our sensors are detecting massive energy buildup in your weapon systems. What are you planning? We're ending this war, Admiral Chen replied simply. Clear the system. Things are about to get very bright. While the main fleet engaged the Vorth forces, Santos and her boarding team made their approach to the massive hive ship. The assault pod had been modified with every stealth system humanity possessed, but stealth only went so far when approaching something the size of a small moon. Hang on, called the pilot as defensive fire erupted around them. This is going to be rough. The pod spiraled through space, dodging bioprojectiles and energy beams while racing toward the hive ship's surface. They landed hard, cutting through the alien hull with plasma torches while Vorth defenders swarmed toward their position. Move fast, Santos ordered her team. We have maybe 20 minutes before this whole place becomes radioactive vapor. They fought their way through corridors that seemed designed by nightmare, past creatures that defied classification, and through chambers that pulsed with alien life. Every step took them deeper into the heart of the enemy fleet's command structure. The Vorth threw everything they had at the boarding team. Acid-spitting creatures that dissolved armor on contact, shape-shifting predators that could mimic human soldiers, living walls that tried to crush intruders with crushing force. But Santos and her team had trained for exactly this kind of mission. They moved like shadows through the alien ship, leaving destruction in their wake as they fought toward their target. Meanwhile, the space battle raged around the hive ship. Human destroyers darted between massive bioships, their weapons carving through alien armor while enemy fire lit up their shields. Fighters engaged in dogfights at impossible speeds, leaving trails of debris and flame across the darkness. The UES Retribution found herself facing 3 hive ships simultaneously. Her weapons blazed as she fought to survive the overwhelming assault, her armor scarred by acid and energy beams. Hull breach on decks 4 through 7, reported damage control. We're venting atmosphere. Seal the compartments, Admiral Chen ordered. All non-essential personnel to emergency stations. She could feel her ship dying around her, but she held her position. Santos needed time to complete her mission, and Admiral Chen would give it to her even if it cost every human life in the fleet. Deep inside the enemy hive ship, Santos finally reached her target, a massive chamber that served as the Vorth swarm's central coordination node. Thousands of neural pathways connected this room to every bioship in the fleet. Destroy this, and the entire swarm would lose cohesion. There, she said, pointing to the pulsing organ at the chamber's center. That's where we plant the charge. The Nova device was small enough to carry in a backpack, but its destructive potential was beyond imagination. When triggered, it would create a controlled stellar collapse, a miniature black hole that would consume everything within a light-minute radius. Santos armed the device and set the timer for 5 minutes. Time to go, she announced to her team. But as they turned to leave, the chamber sealed itself. Living walls flowed together, trapping them inside with the armed Nova charge. Looks like we're not making it out of this one, Sarge, said Private Chen, checking his weapon one final time. Santos nodded calmly. Then we make sure it counts. Check your suits. If we're dying here, we're taking as many of these bastards with us as possible. Outside in space, Admiral Chen watched the countdown timer on her display. 3 minutes until Santos triggered the Nova charge. 3 minutes to get her fleet clear of the blast radius. All ships, she ordered. Emergency withdrawal. Maximum burn on all engines. The human fleet disengaged from combat, racing away from the Vorth forces as fast as their engines could carry them. Behind them, the bioships gave chase, sensing that something had changed. With 30 seconds left on the timer, Admiral Chen opened a communication channel to the entire galaxy. This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the United Earth Forces, she announced. To any Vorth survivors who might be listening, you made a mistake when you decided to consume inhabited worlds. You should have stayed in the dark between galaxies where you belonged. The timer reached 0. The Nova charge detonated deep inside the Vorth hive ship, creating a gravitational singularity that consumed the massive vessel in seconds. The artificial black hole expanded rapidly, pulling in bioships by the hundreds. The Vorth fleet, which had seemed unstoppable just moments before, was torn apart by forces they couldn't understand or resist. The explosion was visible across half the galaxy. A brief, brilliant star that flared to life and then faded, taking the Vorth swarm with it. When the light faded, the system was empty except for debris and radiation. The threat that had consumed 17 star systems and killed billions of sentients was gone. Erased in a single devastating attack. Admiral Chen stood on her damaged bridge, watching the empty space where her enemies had been. The cost had been high. Sergeant Santos and her entire team were gone, along with hundreds of other human soldiers. But they had saved the galaxy. "Admiral," came Thylan's voice over the communicator, "we're detecting no Vorth survivors. The threat appears to be eliminated." "Confirmed," Admiral Chen replied.